All right, well, welcome back to another special edition of Wild Traxx. We have a series of 3 shows that my buddy Rick Allen and I recorded at NAB 2017 for a podcast show called Making Noise with Rick and Rick. Today we've got the final episode, which we recorded with StockMusic.net's founder, Mr. Ryan Allen. We had a good time at that show.
That was an exciting NAB. We were a little under the weather the next day when we recorded this because we'd gone out and got a little bit of food poisoning at a Chinese restaurant.
It wasn't a little bit of food poisoning. It was a lot of bit of food poisoning.
So the interview we did with our heads down a little bit and a lot of Alka-Seltzer, but we made it through. We did it, and we got some great information.
Yep. So we're going to go to that now. We are in the Tascam booth. If I remember right, our buddy Mr. Eric Larson gave us a little spot to record the show. So we're going to go back to the year 2017 at NAB with Mr. Ryan Allen.
Welcome to the podcast that explores everything about the world of sound effects and sound design.
This is Making Noise with Rick and Rick.
Sound effect and sound design experts Rick Allen and Rick Veers.
Welcome to another edition of Making Noise with Rick and Rick. I'm Rick Allen, and
I'm the other Rick.
And we are really lucky to be able to look into stock music and licensing and issues like that today. Introduce our guest.
With us today is Mr. Ryan Allen of StockMusic.net. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
How did you get into, what was the beginning, Ryan, of your adventure into an online way to distribute music?
I come from a tech background. I'm in the tech industry. I've been writing software 25 years. I was working for a big corporate America company, and I knew I had to get out. So, toying with the idea of a startup. I have lots of startup ideas, and just couldn't see myself doing it. So a friend of mine turned me on to the idea of an acquisition. And it took me about 2 years of hitting the market, looking for something. And I met this guy out of Ontario, Canada, named Dan Schmidt. Flew out to his yoga farm out in the country, and we hit it off. We were meant to meet each other, just absolute best friends within 5 minutes. Spent a long weekend together, and by the end of the day, I was the new owner of StockMusic.net.
So, do you have a lot of background in music, or it was the tech part that you found your niche with music?
I'm getting a trial by fire in the music industry. I brought to it a pure tech background. This StockMusic.net was something that Dan Schmidt made and did a fabulous job managing it, marketing it, and bringing it to business. But through the years, he knew nothing about managing software projects. And so it was sort of the perfect stream of, or the perfect storm, should I say, of great business model, great marketing, excellent branding, and horrible technology that needed desperate help.
That was the weak link.
Correct. Yeah. And I'm here to rescue it.
Nice. So this is it. You're now in a new industry. What have you learned about this industry coming in? So you're giving us fresh eyes on this industry.
My attorney tells me if you can license music, you can license anything. It is a ridiculously complicated subject.
Interesting. Okay.
Starting back in Mozart days, there was always the composition and the performance. And that's been that way for hundreds of years. And things have gotten more complicated since then. So, to learn how to license music is not a simple task.
Well, and then also to learn to protect that intellectual property. I mean, you part of your job is then to, once it's licensed, to make sure people don't pirate it, don't use it illegally, and that's a whole other issue. We've in speaking to the people that are up and coming in the younger crowd that is recording and getting into the business. We grew up in now even Napster is outdated, but we grew up in a mentality of if it's on my hard drive, I own it. And that's not the case legally. And for those of us who work in the industry and work really hard creating content, you'll soon learn to appreciate the fact that if you've worked hard for it, you want to get paid for it, and you want to get paid fairly. You don't want to, you don't want to rip anybody off, but you want to get paid fairly for your effort, and that's what a site like yours gives the ability to make a little money back on your effort.
Well, that's exactly what it's for. Is I want to represent the artists and make sure they get their cut of the share, and make it fair for the media producers as well, and make it as easy as possible to make the media producer as completely compliant as they need to be.
We were talking last night about content that people deliver to you. How much content that's submitted is actually kept?
Right. That's great. There's a lot of music being produced worldwide.
Everybody's producing music nowadays.
Everybody, and the barrier to entry is so small. You need a MacBook and Pro Tools. Done. You can make a symphony, right, in your mom's basement. So to answer your question, we're throwing away about 98% of our submissions.
Wow, that is insane. Why? Why is the other 98% not good?
Well, it's subjective, of course.
Sure.
But we're really trying to keep the bar high. If you put your mind, if you try to project your mind into the mindset of a media producer, they have a vision that they're trying to achieve with their media. They want a barroom scene with a twang band in the background or something, and they want to be very specific. To me, a nightmare scenario would be go to a stock site, enter country music twang, and have 10,000 mediocre selections, right? Stockmusic.net is trying to raise the bar and saying, what if we offered just 5 highest quality suggestions you can find? I think that that's our barrier to entry.
One of the problems I think today is sometimes too much choice is what you're saying. Too much choice is a bad thing, because then you can't narrow it down. And we've been talking about metadata and how important it is in sound effects, and it becomes an issue, the exact same issue in stock music. If you're searching for something, it doesn't matter. If you get too many choices, you don't have time to go through all that. So a good site is a site that can narrow and identify the search quickly and really well. What kind of submissions are you looking for? What would you say? What are that 1% that's happening? What makes them work? If you're out there wanting to submit music to your site, what's the criteria you'd suggest?
Well, again, that's subjective as well. So we have a histogram of all genres and moods, and at any point in time, there's going to be a V in that histogram, and we want to fill that V to make it flat. Does that make sense? So, but to be a successful stock music artist, we're really looking for the most, broad range of music production. If you're a one-hit wonder at making a great hip-hop song, the chances of us accepting you into our library is a lot lower than if you can do hip-hop, country western, classical, and most of our most successful artists are of that have that ability, just pure musical talent of any genre. They can produce music.
No, that makes sense. On the actual track, would you want something, would it be better to submit something that is extremely unique, like the bar piano, that sort of thing? Do you want something that is really a niche sound? So would that be better to submit, or a typical, I don't mean the word typical, but a broad acceptance piece of music?
You sort of need both. What really sells are a lot of mainstream, sort of familiar sounds that you might hear. This dubstep sound, you hear this whoa, 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 whoa music, is very, very popular today. To me personally, it's not that favorable, but that doesn't really have any bearing on our library.
But your clients want it. Yeah.
Our clients want it. It's very popular in advertising today, and tomorrow it'll be something else. But there's a lot of tried and true sounds, a lot of that progressive piano, motivational business music sells. Everybody wants that, and you can't get enough of those tracks.
Yep. Now, it's interesting that you had mentioned that dubstep, is kind of hot right now, but then you said, in a year or two, it'll be something completely different.
Right.
How important is it for a composer to have their finger on the pulse of the industry, to understand, what is going to be the next hot thing? How can they predict, okay, this is where it's going to go, or should they just say, nope, I'm going to stay in the box that everybody else is making the same style of music, and then I'll wait for it to change, then I'll start making that style of music? What would you suggest to somebody?
Honestly, I don't think a stock marketplace is the right place for an artist pushing that cutting edge. Staying within that box, staying within what's familiar is what's going to sell today. The fringe, extreme stuff, stock media is not going to be your best avenue to gain traction with that kind of work.
But this is a great point, I think, for composers to realize, because not a lot, but I've met some guys that they're going out on the edge. They're definitely fringe, and to be honest with you, some of their stuff is really cool. But it's like, it's great, but it's kind of like not what's in right now. And a lot of them, they kind of like, no, I'm going to do it this way, and they're pretty hell bent on, yes, this will work out one day. What do you tell somebody like that? Like, just go ahead and keep that on your hard drive, but the stuff we need you to submit is this stuff, or
all of the above. Every once in a while we find a great progressive artist that has amazing musical talent, and you can just tell in the overall composition. They understand the music, yet they're experimenting with new sounds and new beats that we want. And then in those cases, we'll definitely accept you. But these are people that have been writing music for decades. Very rarely will you find someone, unless they're an extreme talent, that can come out of high school and be able to produce some new cutting edge sounds.
And some musicians take it a little personally and feel like, well, I don't want to do what everybody else is doing because I'm an artist, quote unquote, air quotes.
Right.
But there is an absolute talent that has to be recognized to do stock music. It's not, some people kind of put their nose up at it a little bit, like, I don't want to do that because, I'm going to be cutting
selling
edge
out to the man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
Whereas actually it's a big challenge to be able to identify what's popular, what's selling, and to be able to create music on that plane. And so there is an absolute respectable talent to that.
So go ahead.
Oh, and if you're an amazing artist, you can do things on demand. So we do a side business of custom music composition. And so I get requests all the time. Hey, I saw this commercial. I saw a PayPal commercial on YouTube. Can you get me a track that sounds kind of like that, but isn't going to infringe on its copyright? I sure can. We have 160 signed artists, and I know a good dozen of them that can produce sounds like tracks that will not infringe on copyright. Completely different instruments, but very similar feel, genre, mood. Literally in 24 hours of any genre. Country western, hip hop. I had a client a couple months ago ask me, can you make something that sounds like Rocky? Like, well, we can't license Rocky, I'm sorry, but I know a guy that might be able to pull it off. And literally within 24 hours, I had something with a horn section, that motivational, progressive sound, even a choir singing in the background.
Oh, wow.
All done on Pro Tools, because he's such an amazing composer, he can produce anything.
Well, let me ask you this then. Let's say I'm in high school. I just graduated off to college. In my spare time, I'm making music. Obviously, the goal would be to make money off of my music, and I really want to one day come to you and say, look, here's a catalog of stuff I put together or whatever. What advice do you give me? What should I focus on? And furthermore, what point should I say, okay, I think I got some cool stuff. Here's the stuff I'm submitting.
You can always submit. We're going to listen to it. But of course, you don't want to spam us. You don't want to blacklist you. But what I would really suggest to anyone who's seriously taking on the study of music is to be as broad as possible and don't limit your genre. All music styles have something to learn for. If you listen to Metallica, their lead guitar solos are heavily based in classical guitar music. Right? And if you can mix the two, that's what people are really going to identify with.
Do you see mashups becoming a thing? Obviously they are a thing, but do you see that becoming more and more of a... Because like right now we have all these genres that we're all familiar with, but now it's like this meets this, but with this on top. I mean, do you see more a change, I guess, in the category names, or is it just going to be like anything goes anymore?
Anything goes. It's art, right?
Right.
I had an interesting conversation with a colleague of mine at another music startup, and he claims there's nothing new anymore, right? Everything's been done. There will be no more music ever created again.
That's a pretty bold statement.
It's pretty bold, but have you heard anything original lately? Can you name some bands that are just really changing the style of music forever?
Well, I think one of the things with the vastness of the internet, it's become such a niche world where, we could walk around this convention center and find a couple of people and that would say, yes, this is the new style of music, and play you a track. Two people over would play something entirely different and say, this is where music is going. It's become almost an infinite web of music, as opposed to the days of radio exposing just popular music, or back in Beethoven's day, whatever the rich aristocrat chamber hired for the chamber music. There's so much more opportunity to play different kinds of music, but in the stock music industry, it has to be popular. It's got to be, unless you are looking for something crazy niche where you're doing a YouTube video for 3 people or whatever. But it's got to cross a lot of genders, a lot of age groups. It's got to appeal to a lot of different people.
Well, we're really catering towards the media production industry, so people who are telling a story through audio-visual work. And I suppose if you're trying to tell a story of some kind of futuristic science fiction thing, you might be looking for music someone has never heard before. But I think it's fair to say that a vast majority of my sales are some canned genre, something that someone is expecting to tell a story in an audio video
One
scenario.
of the things to remind composers too when they're writing for media music is the music itself is not necessarily the lead instrument. The lead instrument is going to be a voiceover or a visual. And so make sure you leave enough room in your composition
Right.
for other things to happen.
Right.
That's another good point. I guess a lot of guys will mix their tracks so that the center is pretty open and empty, and they'll push things to the side so that when there is a voiceover or something like that, it can easily cut through the mix of the track. And so that's also something to consider.
Absolutely. Like a great film, you won't even notice the music. It's just a feeling it portrays. And unless you close your eyes, you won't realize there's music playing. You'll just be experiencing something that a great videographer is trying to communicate to you.
Now, do you notice trailer music, or do you? Let me ask you this: do you have trailer music in your offerings?
For sure, yeah. Like, what's the difference?
Well, I'm thinking more of like a sound design story versus verse, chorus, verse. So in other words, instead of your traditional pop song, like here's the intro, we're breaking over to the bridge, now we're coming back, and versus, all these things flying around, then it gets into something big and epic and musical, then it just comes into like a big, jail door slamming shut with tons of reverb.
Absolutely. We have a genre, we just call it underscores.
Okay.
And it's exactly that. It's sort of just these cinematography, storytelling experiences that fade in and fade out of different genres and sounds and transitions. That's kind of challenging to map to an existing video, right? And you're going to be doing a lot of sound editing yourself of that track, unless you just won the lotto and your video matches the transitions perfectly.
Well, one of the things that I have found in the past is that editors will actually look for a piece of trailer music before they cut, and they'll use that as like, and it always isn't perfect. Like they'll go grab it off the the shelf and they just drag it on the timeline and be done with it. A lot of times they'll say, well, I'm going to start here, then I might go in and Frankenstein it where I'll cut this out and maybe add this part from another track, but they'll start with a core and then build their story around that.
That is such an awesome point, Rick, because music is really it is a communication of emotions. That's what it is. It is a conduit to help portray an emotion. And if you're a video producer, you need to start with that. That should be the foundation of what your scene is to build. And music is oftentimes an afterthought, right? We built the scene, oh no, we're missing something. What is it? That one special thing, music. But if you start with that music and then build the scene around it, you might have a lot better success in portraying that feeling that you're trying to achieve.
A lot of times when I do a video or a trailer or something that's going to be, big or epic or cinema style, I guess, before, sometimes I'll actually find music before I even script the piece. And I'll use the music to kind of, I know a sense of, okay, this is the emotion I'm after, this is the level of intensity, and this is the pace that I'm after. So let me listen to that. And a lot of times I'll put a track on in a car, and I'll put it on loop. And as I'm driving around, and I'm like, okay, where's my mind going with this? And for the Detroit Chop Shop video diaries, gee whiz, zombie apocalypse, heroes and villains, action movies. We went and actually listened to music before we wrote the scripts for the videos, because I'm like, look, this is kind of what we want it to feel like. And then I would turn around and write it. Now, granted, a lot of people don't do that. And the majority of people that are going to come to your company are going to be like, no, we've already got it written. It's already, in fact, we've already shot it. Now we need to put it together. But as an artist, to me, it's inspiring to listen to the emotion, the feeling, the pacing before I actually write.
That's a fantastic approach. I promote that a lot. I think it's a good idea.
I think some of it comes from, I'm a musician before I was a sound designer, so I came from it from a musical standpoint. So that's kind of where my mind goes with it.
Music first.
Well, and even from a practical standpoint, it's hard to, I've worked on projects before where the video editor will come back and go, well, can't you just move this hit about, to match the sync? It's like, no, there's a rhythm to it. There's a beat. No, it's going to sound like you trip over the dance floor. And that's, it's nothing, not taking anything away from video editing skills, but it is easier to edit the video to match the beats of the music and the changing points of emotion of the music than it is to try to force the music to do something it can't do.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Very good point.
How can we point people to what you've got coming up?
Right, so we're about to go live with a bunch of blast wave sound effects.
Oh, I know that guy.
Yeah, I do too. I think we have about 69,000 of them, and probably within the next month, this should be live on the store, ready for your consumption.
Woohoo! And there are actually cinema elements. There's tons of production elements and things in there. There's some pre-built trailer stuff, but a lot of it was intended to serve as the toolkit to make your own custom trailer,
awesome.
design.
Yeah. The raw materials.
Yep.
Yeah.
Look forward to hearing that. That's going to be fun.
One of the things that was the most frustrating for me when I first got in the business was a lot of the stuff was pre-built, pre-made, and it was a composite versus components, meaning it was already put together and you couldn't unmix it or, and that used to frustrate me. I was like, come on, guys, you guys are making this stuff. Give me the raw materials so that if I do want to tweak or mix or blend or whatever, I've got that ability. And a lot of times they weren't doing that. So when I first started Blast Wave Effects, that was my mission was, all right, I know what it's like to be a sound designer that's going, come on guys, you almost had it. Let's give me just a little bit more. So I just put as much stuff in there as I could that I thought would be completely usable and useful to actually build customized tracks.
As a user looking into that, what you guys are doing there, what I like about that is if you're in a big hurry, you've got the finished piece. But if there are two types of people. The guys that don't have enough time and just have to throw something together, and there are times where that happens. But the times when you can massage it, nail it, really put some time into it, make it work perfectly. If you don't have those individual work perks, you can't do that. And so the fact that you guys are providing that, to me, that's a major plus.
Finding both ends of that spectrum.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Again, thank you for joining us and listening in on the crazy time here and the noisy time at the NAB convention. And thank you, Tascam, for letting us take their booth and get everybody together and make some noise with Rick and Rick.
Thanks for listening to Making Noise with Rick and Rick. Keep an ear out. Another episode is never that far away.